Welcome to Conscious Corner. My guest today, Bob Rogers, and I go way back, all the way to high school. Over the years, our paths reconnected in a professional way through work we were both doing to support people navigating divorce and major life transitions. Bob is a financial planner at Bash Capital, and much of his work focuses on helping people who are going through divorce slow down the chaos, make sense of the financial picture, and begin to see a realistic roadmap forward. Having worked as a family law attorney and now as a mindfulness coach supporting those navigating the divorce process, I've seen how divorce can be one of the most emotionally and financially overwhelming experiences a person faces. The uncertainty, fear, and tendency to catastrophize can make it incredibly difficult to think clearly. In this episode, Bob and I explore how thoughtful financial planning alongside legal, emotional, and mindfulness support can help people move from panic to clarity. This is a conversation about reducing overwhelm, creating understanding, and remembering that you don't have to navigate these transitions alone. So big welcome to you, Bob. Thanks so much for joining me here today.
Thank you for having me. It's a great honor, and I'm really excited about it. And I just wanted to say I'm really impressed with how you're taking the mindfulness and utilizing it in other areas like finance and divorce, because I think it is a great tool for people to use, and it's really underutilized. So I really appreciate it, and thanks for having me.
Thank you. It's been an incredible tool in the work that I do now, but in the work that I did in a really stressful industry. So it brings me a lot of joy to be able to share it with others, especially during some of life's greatest transitions. So yeah, I'm really excited to explore the ways in which we respectively support people with what can be really challenging in life. So to begin, I just wanted to invite you to share a bit about your work at Bash Capital and the clients you often support, particularly those navigating divorce.
So, Bash Capital, we're an independent financial planning and asset management firm. We are appointed with and backed by LPL Financial, which is one of the largest independent broker-dealers in the country. And I think what sets us apart at Bash Capital is our team approach and how we collaborate with our transparency and integrity with our clients. We're committed to arming clients with sage financial advice, and we do have some unique skill sets and credentials, such as certified financial planners like myself, certified public accountants, certified financial analysts, and we really leverage our entire team to deliver a unique experience. We do work with individuals, we work with business owners, and we work with corporations. And as a certified financial planner, I specifically, try my best to deliver comprehensive and holistic financial advice, tailored to the client. And one of the specific types of planning that I do is divorce planning. And these clients are either contemplating and thinking about it or usually in the early stages of divorce. And I sometimes work with both spouses, sometimes work with one spouse, but in either case, I do closely work with their team. So whether that's a legal team, an accountant, a therapist, a mindfulness coach, I just become part of the team and try to bring as much value as I can from the financial side.
I hear you say team a lot, and I like the team approach. I think that it can offer immense support, and the fact that you have all these different experts housed within your company, I think it's like a one-stop shop where you can get all these resources and the deep support that can be so beneficial in the process. I know from having worked in family law as a lawyer and now in my role as a mindfulness coach and facilitator to teams and to individuals who are going through the divorce process, I know the reasons why this can create such intense panic for people. But from your experience in the work that you do, why does divorce tend to create such intense financial panic and reactivity for people?
I think finances typically cause stress in general. And
Mm,
I think it's maybe lack of education because if you're not in the industry, it can be very overwhelming to understand what's going on with your finances. And I think one of the main reasons from a divorce standpoint is the emotion that's tied to people's finances. And it's really heightened when uncertainty creeps in. And divorce creates a lot of uncertainty for everybody involved. I think, people tend to worry about the future and what's out of their control. And as we know, that's what causes anxiety and stress, right? I
mhm.
often see that one spouse may handle the finances, the other spouse handles other tasks. And when you're going through divorce, now you have to be the one usually making some decisions that you're not used to making. And I
Right.
think, that just opens up a whole nother level of anxiety and stress, along with the fact that a lot of people just, they don't have a grasp of their finances like they want to in general.
Yeah, any type of change or uncertainty and that feeling of not being in control, especially to your point, when it's something that maybe we weren't previously handling our finances, it can be really scary. And I wanted to share something with you. I saw some interesting research that really drives home how uncomfortable human beings can be around uncertainty. And one of the studies that I saw showed that people find the unknown, so like what you're talking about, these what ifs, more stressful than knowing something bad is guaranteed to happen. So, like the oh no's, we'd rather know for sure that there's going to be something bad than that chance of maybe something possibly going bad. And the brain struggles more with 50% odds of a negative outcome than a 100% chance because we thrive on clear, actionable data. So we like to know what we're in for or what is ahead. So it makes perfect sense why something as emotional and as scary on a financial end can really cause discomfort.
That's a really interesting stat. I mean, I would think that the work that you do with mindfulness planning should really help people in that area stay grounded and stay present and not be as focused on the unknown. And I would think that would really help with alleviating some of the anxiety.
Yeah, well, what really can be so beneficial is the awareness piece, to notice where our mind is taking us. And sometimes the biggest, I don't want to say the biggest hurdle, what can cause us the most discomfort is not noticing just how often we're getting pushed and pulled by our thoughts. And more often than not, our thoughts don't take us into a positive direction. They take us into doom and gloom.
Right.
So in terms of what I can offer is that awareness to notice how we're relating to something that is truly is truly one of the most challenging situations or experiences of our lifetime, but we don't have to compound that stress with our thoughts. And to be able to work with someone like yourself who can offer us education and understanding combined with understanding how our minds work, that can give us a huge sense of agency in the process. So I'm curious, when someone comes to you in the midst of a divorce, what are some of the biggest fears, or getting back to this point on thoughts, maybe their misconceptions, the things that they're thinking about around money and assets?
I think from a fear standpoint, it's almost, exactly what we were just speaking about, but the fear of the unknown. I think that fear that their new lifestyle is going to be different. And in most cases, their lives will be very different.
Mhm.
As much as everybody tries to keep things steady during these processes, things are going to change, and sometimes they change in big ways. And I think that is a big fear factor for people
Hmm.
going through
Hmm.
divorce. And really with any life event, but I think even more so with divorce, especially if there's kids involved or other
Yeah.
situations involved. I think the fear of just what's our next step in our life going to look like now that it's different.
Yeah.
Um, I think some of the misconceptions, and this is surrounded more around specific like assets and property
Hmm.
and how they're valuated and how they are not always treated equally. I think from a basic standpoint, people look at their assets and their property, and one example is, okay, we have a primary residence, right? And we also have a 401k plan or a retirement plan. Those are usually two of most people's biggest assets. So if the primary house is valued at 400,000 and the 401k is valued at 400,000, what I often see is people will say, okay, well, I want to keep the house. You can
Hmm.
keep your retirement account. They're both worth 400,000. Simple, easy peasy, and then, let's just go our separate ways.
Hmm.
But I think what people don't realize is the house, as an example, is not really an asset, but more of a liability. It comes with a lot of expenses. You're always going to be paying property taxes. You're always going to have the upkeep. You're always going to have, paying utilities and everything that goes along with the house.
Hmm.
And it's also more of an illiquid asset. So, usually you have to give something up to get something in this scenario. So if you're taking the house, then you're probably giving up some form of asset that might be a lot more accessible in an emergency. Whereas the house is really not accessible. You can't just pull $5,000 out of the walls if your car breaks down. So I
Hmm.
think understanding the access and liquidity and also the taxability of it. And an example with that is the 401k.
Yeah.
If you have $400,000 and your goal is, okay, well, I'm going to liquidate this and I'm going to live off of this now as part of my settlement. Well, the 400,000 in most cases hasn't been taxed yet. If it's a pre-tax type of account, it hasn't been taxed. So if you liquidate 400,000, that's basically 400,000 of income that you had that year. So you may walk away with 30% less
Yeah.
just simply because you have to pay taxes on it. If you're under 59 and a half, there's an additional penalty that you may even pay, which could even make it worse. So I think from the surface, a lot of people, the misconceptions is that just because the monetary value of something is the same, that they should be treated the same. And really, that's not the case. And that's why I think you really have to have professionals that are going to educate you and really run through the different scenarios as to how things are taxed and what may make the best, sense for you. And not just in the short term, but also in the long term.
Yeah, I was just going to say that lots of times we can fall into only looking at things in the short term, and that in the long term, when you're hit with a surprise, as a divorcee going through the process, that's really terrible. So to be able to have your expertise, to have the ability to foresee how this is going to play out, can I say like knowledge is power. That's really going to help you to make the right decisions long term as opposed to just jumping at something short term to get through it, but also to build on the what you were speaking about prior to that about the unknown. There's from a physiological standpoint, it makes sense why there is so much fear around the unknown, because when we're feeling really fearful about what's to come, or maybe we're feeling threatened in some way by the not knowing, the brain that's responsible for this alarm reactivity that we have is the amygdala, and it gets activated. And then you may see this with some of the clients that you deal with. They go into fight or flight, And so it gets really, really difficult to kind of project further out, to be able to grasp how this is going to affect them long term. They're just sort of trying to push through in the moment. And it can be difficult to make some of those more complex decisions. But what I love about what you and your team are helping with in a really skillful way is that you conduct a detailed financial analysis, such as cash flow and budgeting and tax planning. And I think that's helpful. How does having, in your opinion, how does having a clear picture help regulate some of the emotional overwhelm that your clients may be experiencing?
It makes an enormous impact, and it really, in my opinion, is one of the ways to help clients relieve stress in a fairly big way. Even if the potential outcomes aren't the desired outcomes that they're looking for, like even going back to the statistic that you had mentioned, this is a perfect example of seeing the big picture and knowing what to expect. That will ease the anxiety and the stress. And even if the future based off of the numbers doesn't fit what you were expecting or doesn't really give you the same lifestyle that you're accustomed to, just seeing it and knowing, I think, is hugely important with lowering those stress levels. I always recommend somebody that's contemplating divorce or even in the early stages of doing a post-divorce budget as one of the first steps in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And the post-divorce budget, it will shed light on what their new potential financial lifestyle could look like and what adjustments they're going to need to make. And this is a planning tool that we use not just in divorce, but in every aspect of financial planning because it really is the foundation of most financial plans. Um, as it relates to divorce, what I also think this becomes really important for is the negotiation process, right, in the divorce, because
Yeah.
it gives both parties a realistic expectation of what each side needs and wants and why, right? And it removes the emotion from the process and almost brings just realistic numbers. Because a lot of times, anger and emotions drive this process through divorce. But
Yeah.
when you have the numbers to back it up, it's really a valuable tool to use. And I think it sheds light on why you're coming to the table with certain, I guess maybe demands. Some people want to call it a demand, but I think it's really more about why the other spouse can clearly see, okay, this person wants this because of this. Like they really need this in order to live. They're not just making it up because, they want a higher number. So I think seeing the picture and having the expectation greatly lowers, the anxiety. And even if it's not what you want to see, it's still a huge improvement than not knowing what the situation is going to look like.
Yeah. And I see it all the time when we're highly reactive, when we're feeling overwhelmed and we're emotional. We can't see the big picture as clearly and we can't make wise decisions. So when we can balance out our nervous systems, when we can feel more centered emotionally, to your point, there's sort of space for more conversation and discussion as opposed to there being friction. So I think it leads to better outcomes for both sides. And also to sort of piggyback on what you said in terms of the vision, like having a roadmap and having this more like bird's eye view, looking down, seeing the big picture as opposed to being laser focused on maybe one issue is what helps us to take everything into consideration. So I think it's so helpful to be able to have the support to calm ourselves down when we're going through this process on the emotional end, but then to your point, to be able to see the whole picture clearly and have a roadmap to guide us. I think we've both seen how powerful it can be when someone surrounds themselves with the right team, be it a financial planner, an attorney, a therapist, a mindfulness teacher, or coach. From your perspective and what you've seen in the work that you do, how does that kind of support change the divorce experience?
I think it's a huge, huge impact on the process. I think that a common theme in divorce is that emotions often drive the process, and that becomes dangerous and at times even a disadvantage to the end result financially and emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that I see often, even couples that are contemplating or going through divorce, that it's, they both agree and we're going to do this, easily, we still get along. It just didn't work out. And they start maybe with like a pro se type scenario where they're trying to just do it on their own.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem to work. Then they move to okay, we'll do mediation. And, the emotions are always there, right? So if you're having a separation from a relationship, there's always going to be emotions. And I think the biggest impact that having a team around you is they help remove those emotions from some of the decisions that you're going to make.
Mm.
Because having professionals that specialize in the areas that you mentioned, it's really important to the decision-making process. Like
Yeah.
those team of professionals should have your best interest in mind, and they can help remove that emotion when the decisions are made. Because I often see people make decisions because it's almost too overwhelming. They want the divorce to be over with quickly.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's very traumatic. And what happens is they just give everything to the other spouse because they want it over with
Mm-hmm.
ASAP. And what
Mm-hmm.
happens is that can be very, very damaging in the long run. You
Yeah.
give everything away so that the process and the divorce is over and that you can move on, which is understandable. But what you're doing is you're giving up things that you're entitled to that potentially down the road you're going to look back on and say, I can't believe I did that, or I
Yeah.
wish, I made this decision or that decision. And having that team, that's what they're there for, right? They're
Yeah.
there to keep you in line with saying, this is what's going to make your new lifestyle more affordable, what's going to give you the tools to really make those decisions and help with the decision making, because that I think is besides like the legal aspect and the financial aspect, you know, if you don't have a team that's really there as an advocate for you, you can't do it alone. It's too much to, I think, go through a process like this on your own.
Yeah.
And a lot of decisions just, get overlooked when you don't have the right people in your corner.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you on that. And I like what you're saying in terms of tools that as your team supporting you, that we offer you these different tools, and it can make all the difference in helping individuals to step out of reactivity so that they can respond in conscious ways for themselves, not just in the immediate short term, but in the long term, and make decisions that are going to be beneficial if they have children. So again, getting back to this bigger picture, expanding and being able to get to a place where you feel centered, you have the tools, the education that experts like yourself provide. And then from my end as the mindfulness coach, I think I wanted to get back to emotions. We've sort of tossed the word emotion around a lot, and I think it's so important for people going through this process to really open to their emotions. When we're feeling happy and relaxed, it's really easy to connect with those emotions. When we're going through something as trying as divorce, the emotions tend to be uncomfortable or challenging. So I help these individuals to really notice what's showing up for them physically, thought wise, but also this emotional piece. And what I see a lot in individuals going through divorce is they can be incredibly critical of themselves and judgmental in getting to this place in their lives, to beating themselves up for what they did wrong or what they could have done better. So really getting intimate around the emotions that are showing up and helping them to connect with their inner tools. So we're like the outer tools that come in, but through the work that we do, we can also help them, at least I know from the mindfulness end, to get more in touch with their inner tools that can really help them to be resilient in something that can feel so overwhelming. And speaking
Well,
about,
and
sorry,
I love that because how you said, the tools that are internal and external, and I would imagine that it starts internally, right? If you are in a good mindset, in a good place, the other external decisions that you may have to make from a financial standpoint become a little bit easier.
yeah,
And especially if you have the team around you, they're gonna keep the accountability there. They're gonna keep you in line. But I think just being in the right headspace,
yeah.
if that should be, in my opinion, the first step, right? Because that's gonna then help with the other areas going forward.
Yeah, it's sort of like, what's our baseline? Where are we? And someone asked me the other day, they said, what's the difference between mindfulness and mindset? And mindfulness is the awareness piece, and mindset is sort of like the lens with which we're experiencing or viewing something. So I help people to deepen their awareness. How are they relating to something that is essentially one of the most stressful experiences of a lifetime? They can gain awareness, and then through that awareness, they can recognize their mindset, what it is they're telling themselves, what it is they're feeling. And then we actually have the power, we have the agency to change our mindset. And I think in working with a team and working with someone like yourself, that the work that you do and the work that your team has to offer can be received that much more powerfully when the person going through the process is in an more ideal mindset. So we need to be able to take in what we're being offered, but we can't, sometimes we don't have the bandwidth to take in if we're not aware of the ways that we're shutting down. And so that gets back to the emotional piece. When we're so overwhelmed emotionally, we just don't have the ability to take in. So it can be helpful to, as counterintuitive as it may sound, to embrace the good, the bad, the ugly, the uncomfortable, and to be our own good friend in the process, because what I often see is we're less than kind to ourselves. So the emotional piece is a really big component to offering ourselves some support internally, but then opening to the external tools and support.
Yeah,
So
I agree 100%.
yeah, thank you for building on that, and just sort of another way that we tend to get in our own way, or I see clients who are going through divorce process can get in their own way, is they catastrophize. They look at things as doom and gloom, and I'm sure you see this from the financial end of things. So I'm curious, what advice do you offer to maybe help them ground themselves and not make fear-based decisions in those moments when they're catastrophizing?
Yeah, absolutely. I see that often. And, just in general, when it comes to finances, I think, because a lot of that is based off of, I think, previous experiences that they've had, and that gives them almost, their own interpretation of certain things financially. But
Yeah.
I think staying focused on what you can control and having the plans, right? So if you have the plan and you have the steps that you know you need to take for the plan, then
Mhm.
there's always going to be some variables that you can't control. So if you just stay focused on what you can control, then I think that helps out in a big way because, there's things in finances like the stock market, the economy that you just can't control, right? You
Mhm.
can't control the outcomes of those areas for the most part. But if you have a plan and you use the professionals to help educate you on those areas that you can't control, I think having the education will make people feel more comfortable.
For
But
sure.
then, you'll understand them better as well. But you'll also develop, a goal-based plan that's specific to your needs and wants. And then you're going to have the professionals to really help you implement the plan and monitor the plan as things change, whether it be financially or personally. I think sometimes just focusing on the little things each day can
Mhm.
make small progress, and don't focus on the big picture because that becomes overwhelming and that helps you stay grounded.
Yeah.
An example that I always use is when people are trying to lose weight, right? If you focus on the end goal, then it becomes very overwhelming, right? So if you
Yeah.
focus each day on making small progress, like
Mhm.
I always say, progress compounds, just like your
Yes.
assets and rates of returns. Over time, you can achieve really big things that you didn't think were ever possible because you didn't look so far ahead. You
Yeah.
just took each day and said, I'm going to make a little progress today. Maybe it's a little progress from a financial standpoint, maybe it's a little progress from an internal emotional standpoint, maybe it's a little progress with the divorce, whatever it may be. I think just it helps you stay grounded by just focusing on the now and not looking at the big picture, which can be very overwhelming. And, like a sports analogy, they say it all the time. We're just focused on the next game, right? They're not
Mhm.
looking at the Super Bowl or the playoffs when it's week 3 in the season. They're focused on that game. And then when that game's over, they're preparing for the next game. And I think if
Right.
you have that mentality, it helps you stay grounded and things don't become as overwhelming.
Yeah. And I help with people noticing when they're so caught up in what's to come, the what ifs, they're worrying about the future, the next moment. And you also mentioned that we have a tendency to rehash the past, to think about maybe how things went down in the past. And when we live in that constant pendulum like thought process, we can really stir up a lot of agitation for ourselves in the moment. But when we're in the moment, we can invite a bit more ease. And just as you're speaking to how beneficial a plan can have, a plan can give us a sense of agency. And there are, as you said, there are certain things that we can control, but we can't control the future. We can't change the past, but we can be more fully in this moment. This is the only moment that we truly have. So when we show up for these little moments and have these little wins that we can take in, I love what you're saying. We can't discount them because the more and more we lean into them and the more and more we commit to even just the little things each day, they do compound. They build over time in pretty big ways. So I think in terms of mindset, it's a great outlook to have as opposed to just catastrophizing and worrying about the future or
Right.
rehashing what didn't feel right or didn't work out so well for us in the past. I also, from a mindfulness angle, I teach people that our minds like to time travel, forward, backward, but the body is always in the here and now. And the more and more we can connect with the sense of the body, not having to like figure anything out, but just feel into the body, that is also a really great way to ground ourselves, to anchor ourselves in the present, as opposed to just getting lost in future or past.
Right. And I think also when we talk about having, a team around you, I mean, not just even a team of professionals, but surrounding yourself with people that are, on your side that can just, I think, be, there as a sounding board and be there to, support you in any way, makes that process a little bit easier. And from a financial team standpoint, we're here to, keep people on track too, because life gets in the way and things get put on the back burner. And sometimes you just need somebody that's going to give you a little nudge and say, okay, we have to start working on this, or we have a
Yeah.
timeline and here's some timelines that we really want to get this achieved within. So having those support both on the financial and professional and on the personal level, I think is a big piece of that also.
Yeah, I think the team aspect offers a great sense of accountability. Like you said, our lives are full and life seems to be moving at warp speed. So this may get pushed to the back burner, but when you're working with a team, it can come to the foreground of attention. And also the team aspect in terms of like a personal support, to know that you're not alone and that you have a variety of experts who are on your side, I think is a huge part of the support piece in the process. So
Absolutely.
before we wrap up, I'd love to kind of zoom out for a moment. And for people who may not be going through divorce, but are simply trying to be more intentional and mindful about their finances, how can working with someone like you and your team help reduce overwhelm and clarity?
I think, and this is a perfect example of what we're going through right now today with all of the geopolitical risk and just everything that's going on in general is, we're inundated and flooded with information every day. There's so many channels of information now between social media and the news outlets. So I think working with a team of professionals, they can help, decipher what's real, what's not, what you should be concerned about, what you shouldn't be concerned about, maybe where your focus should be. And I think helping decipher some of the noise is one of the big things that I think the value that comes out of working with professionals, because that alone can drive anybody crazy. And,
Yeah.
when we were in high school, not to date our ages, but, there wasn't the internet like it is today. There
Right.
wasn't, it wasn't so easy to get the information that's at your fingertips. As a matter of fact, a lot of times we don't even ask for it. It's just somehow now given to us through, AI and all different channels. But
Yeah.
I think, that can be a really big value to a lot of people. It's just working with professionals from that regard. And then just to get even a little specific, I mean, we do primarily goal-based planning, and I think that when you work with a certified financial planner, you have these deep conversations about your goals and what it is that you want to do and what is it that keeps you up at night? What is it that makes you happy? What is important to you and your family, and not just financially, but this plays a part in the finances as well. So I think having those conversations with a third party that is not intertwined in it as much can
Mm-hmm.
really help with the goal planning.
Yeah.
And I think, you specifically can list out your goals, short, intermediate, long term, put monetary value on those goals,
Yeah.
time horizon on those goals. And
Mm-hmm.
I think more importantly, rank the goals of importance. What is a non-negotiable? what is something that's more of a wish? What is something that's more of a want? What is something that I need? And I
Mm.
think when you have that foundation of your plan, then the conversations really start to open up, even between spouses, between partners, and between their professionals. And I think having somebody that understands and knows that can then really help implement and monitor that over time. And I think that's one thing that we do with our clients that they really appreciate is just, being part of their lives and helping them with making those decisions.
Yeah, I think what people appreciate from the work that you and I do is that we can offer them a lot of clarity at a time where it can be really confusing and overwhelming. And to your point about all the noise, I mean, my mind, my brain can get so overstimulated with all of the information that we're sort of pumped, whether we want it or not. And so to have a team where you feel safe and you can trust them and you're getting really valuable education and understanding around something that is likely very new and can feel really daunting, you can't put a value on that. So I think the clarity piece, the safety, the trust are really so beneficial. And for listeners who are navigating divorce or another type of major life transition, or maybe they just want more support around their financial planning, like you're saying, like we can be more intentional and have a clear plan. How can they learn more about your work and connect with you?
Absolutely. So I'm always a big fan of having a conversation with somebody. I think having a conversation is always the first step. I don't charge any type of fees to have conversations with people. So I would say have an introduction conversation, whether that's in person, via Zoom, via phone call, connect, see if we connect, see how Bash can bring value to them. And, I'm always open to connecting on social media, whether that's LinkedIn. Our website is has a lot of good information, bashcapital.com. We have a YouTube channel. You can also access our videos from YouTube right on our website. So again, that sheds a lot of light on some of the uncertainty out there with you know, our CFO that puts, some valuable content out on what's going on in real time. So I think, obviously always connecting via email, social media, or a phone call is always welcomed.
Thank you. And I will put all of that information in the show notes so that people have all the ways that they can connect with you and your company. So I want to thank you for being here with me. I know that we missed our latest high school reunion. So in a sense, this is like a mini reunion for us, but I'm really grateful to know you and to be able to collaborate with you with the work that we do. And it's been a joy having you on the show.
Well, thank you so much. Again, it's been great connecting again and hopefully we'll do it again soon. And I really appreciate your time and again the work that you're doing. I think it's invaluable to people. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Take care,
All right.
everyone.
Thank you.